In a case built almost entirely on after-the-fact interviews and competing memories, that recording is something rarer.
We have retained audio engineering experts to be able to decipher and to render expert opinions on the validity of the CTO 911 audio that seems to suggest things about the presence of Nolan.
A real-time, time-stamped account of exactly what was happening while Nolan was still, by every account, alive somewhere on that island. For weeks, it sat quietly in the case file for exactly that reason, filed alongside search logs, drone reports, and timelines. Then it stopped sitting quietly. A second version of the recording began circulating online, longer than the original, and in it, listeners swore they could make out something chilling buried in the static. A voice, some claimed, asking if he was dead. If you're watching this from a place where this case has made headlines, or from somewhere it hasn't reached yet, let us know in the comments. And if you want to stay with this investigation as it develops, this is the channel to subscribe to.
Nolan Wells was an 18-year-old black teenager who, on 4th of July, was celebrating with his friends, and he went out on Horn Island. He went with his 3 other friends, at least what we have in the photograph, and they were young white teenagers. He was the only black teenager, and somehow they all came back home safely on the 4th of July, but Nolan Wells did not come home. His mother, their families announced that he was missing. They were, out of their mind with concern. And then his body was found washed up on shore 2 days later, face down, dead. And so then everybody started to try to say, well, what happened? When you look at the videos, there were 300, 400 people out there. And what we've been saying, somebody knows something, somebody saw something. There was a young lady named Katie who said that, she was talking to Nolan, but then he got back on the boat with the people he came with, or got back on the boat with the boys. And the boys who were on the boat with him said, Nolan said he was going to stay behind with Katie, and that he was not going to go back with them. One of the things that has been bewildering is the fact that if he says he's going to stay behind, why doesn't an 18-year-old get their cell phone? If they're not going to go with the boat, why would they leave it with them? His mother, called his phone 3 times, got no answer after they started getting concerned. And it was when they did the Life 360, trying to say, find my phone, is when she found out that the phone were with the friends. And so her friend went to get the phone. And when they got the phone back, they discovered that there were a lot of Snapchat messages that were deleted. They also found that there were some texts deleted. So that was very concerning to them as they're trying to figure out, what happened to my child? Our child is dead and we have no answers. Nobody's telling us anything. And so it became just an incredibly painful ordeal for them trying to find out what happened to Nolan Wells. And then America became engaged in this matter because it wasn't adding up to anybody. He says, I'm going to stay behind, but he leaves his cell phone. He doesn't have his car keys. Well, if he's staying behind and you don't have any of that information, people are saying, did he stay behind? And so that becomes a question. Um, and, you know, obviously there's this CETO audio that comes out that people have did forensic audio engineering on it to try to see what was being said on the audio recording of the CETO counter 911 type call. And it's in that call that people say they hear certain things. We have retained audio engineering experts to be able to decipher and to render expert opinions on the validity of the CETO 911 audio that seems to suggest things about the presence of Nolan. And so we are trying not to speculate, we're trying to investigate, but we are asking questions, questions that don't add up to us. And that's what everybody's been doing because everybody says, how can this 18-year-old college football player who's in tip-top shape just go missing and nobody knows anything? Nobody's seen anything. And the sheriff within, hours after he was discovered, his dead body, they claimed that, that no foul play, accidental drowning is what they suggest. And his family are saying, we can't accept that when you make that conclusion without doing no investigations. And so what they want is a full, impartial, fair investigation into what happened to Nolan Wells. In our community, we see people investigate it very zealously. And so we want the same thing for our children. We want them to zealously investigate this matter just as if they would if the roles were reversed. And that's what I think has people in the minority community saying, hold on, we want to know what's on everybody's phone. We want to know social media because all of that could become very relevant information as to what happened to Nolan Wells.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the woman that Nolan was hanging out with when he was at the island, Katie, her sister, Gracie, came out and said that Nolan intended to go back to the mainland with his friends, right?
Yeah, there seems to be a conflict in what they're saying. They said he stayed with the young lady. The young lady said no, he got back on the boat. And so, that seems to be one of the biggest issues that everybody is trying to figure out, as well as the independent autopsy where he had red discoloration at the back of his brain that was found in the second autopsy, and also the fact that the initial state medical examiner kept possession of Nolan Wells' throat. And we don't know why they did that. Our pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, said when he was the chief medical examiner for the city of Washington, D.C., that they normally would do that it wasn't uncommon if they suspected that there might be some fracture or some compressions to the throat.
So after y'all did the autopsy, from what you know, what do you believe that was on the back of his neck?
We can't speculate. We know that we think Dr. Roger Mitchell should have the benefit of looking at all the autopsy notes and observations and photographs from the first autopsy, and then have, the state medical examiner be able to look at all of his notes from the second autopsy and try to work together to figure out what conclusions that they can draw from the autopsies, both of them. And then also waiting for toxicology. That becomes a factor in finding out the manner and cause of death. But Dr. Mitchell said, and this is a very, very important, he said, if it's a drowning, then that still doesn't answer the whole question of what happened to Nolan Wells, because he said then there are questions about, was Nolan Wells' condition of his body conscious or unconscious when he went into the water? Furthermore, he said, did he go into the water unforced or forced? He said all those things become factors.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know his friend Warren Hudson, he came out with an interview where he made a statement about how Nolan, he was drinking liquor on the boat. You heard about that?
Well, we don't know. We want the toxicology to come. We know when you hear the CETO audio call, it appears that there was some intoxication. But again, toxicology can tell us that. And people's firsthand eyewitness testimony can tell us that. We want answers. You know, as I've said over and over again, I am for truth, no matter who it implicates or who it exonerates. I am for justice, no matter who it convicts or who it acquits. And I am certainly for transparency, so all of us can see and we can have trust in the system that this was a fair, impartial, and complete investigation. That's what everybody would want if this was their child.
Here's what most people never heard about that viral clip. It didn't match. A forensic audio analyst who compared the two recordings found the circulating version ran a full 20 seconds longer than the file Mississippi officials had actually released, carrying an entirely different digital signature. Whatever people believed they'd heard may never have been on that call to begin with. That single detail didn't just complicate an online mystery, it endangered real people. In the days after the recording spread, individuals connected to the case, some of them barely out of their teens, say they were identified, tracked down, and threatened online over a version of events investigators themselves cannot confirm ever existed, which is exactly the storm Ben Crump walked into at the end of July, at the center of one of the most closely watched true crime investigations in the country. Standing before a national audience, the attorney representing Nolan's family made an announcement that reset the conversation entirely. His legal team, he said, had bypassed the noise altogether, obtaining the complete, unaltered CETO recording directly through official channels, and handing it to independent forensic audio engineers with instructions to examine every second of it. Not a clip, not an enhanced version pulled from social media. The whole call, start to finish. He didn't stop there. Alongside the audio review, Crump revealed his team is now working with ocean engineering experts, specialists in tides and current patterns, to determine whether the water conditions recorded that day actually line up with where investigators say Nolan was last seen and where his body was ultimately recovered. A detail that sounds technical, almost dry, until you realize what it's built to answer: whether the official account of July 4th holds up against the physical evidence of the water itself. Beside him, Nolan's mother didn't need a forensic report to explain her pain. Nearly a month without her son. Still no answers about his final hours on that island. "We will not rest until we get answers," she told the room.
We will not be distracted. We are ready to do whatever we need to do as his parents to continue advocating for him, because Nolan is not here. He is not here to speak for himself. He is not here to tell us what happened. So again, we will not rest until we get answers.
Two investigations are now unfolding in parallel. One official, moving slowly toward a grand jury still weeks away, and one entirely new, a from-scratch forensic re-examination of the single piece of recorded evidence that has already reshaped public understanding of this case once, and that Nolan's family believes could do it again. Because the question driving this story forward was never really about a boat, or a bilge pump, or a call that lasted only a few minutes. It's about what that call actually captured, and whether the truth was sitting inside it all along, waiting for someone with the right tools and the full recording to listen closely enough to find it. That forensic audio review isn't happening in isolation. It's one piece of a far larger reinvestigation that Crump laid out, point by point, in Nashville that same afternoon. And each piece is aimed at the same underlying question. Does the story everyone has been told about July 4th actually hold up against the physical evidence? Start with the tides. It sounds like the kind of detail that's almost too technical to matter, until you understand what it's built to test. Nolan's friends have said he chose to stay behind on Horn Island, planning to catch a ride back with someone else. His body was recovered 2 days later, in the water, off a specific stretch of that same island. The legal team is now working with ocean engineering experts to model the currents moving through that stretch of coastline across July 4th and 5th to determine whether it's even physically plausible for a body to end up exactly where investigators say Nolan's was found. If the tides don't cooperate with the accepted timeline, that isn't a minor inconsistency. It's a question mark over the entire account of his final hours. It's worth pausing on something that cuts the other way. A retired FBI agent who reviewed the original, unaltered CETO recording said publicly that he didn't hear anything nefarious in it. No threats, no violence, nothing beyond the ordinary panic of a sinking boat. But nothing nefarious to the ear and nothing there at all are two different standards. Closing that gap for good is exactly what a full forensic pass is designed to do. Then there's the body itself, or more precisely, what's missing from it. At that same conference, the attorney returned to the findings of the independent autopsy, completed weeks earlier by a forensic pathologist in Washington, D.C. The report found no skull fractures, no lacerations, no obvious signs of a struggle. But it did find something else. A patch of reddish discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head, with no clear explanation for how it got there. It could be decomposition. It could be trauma. Weeks of independent analysis later, nobody outside that room can say for certain which. What the report couldn't determine may matter just as much as what it found. There was no way to confirm whether water was present in Nolan's lungs, the detail that typically points toward drowning. And even if it had been there, Crump reminded the room, a drowning finding alone wouldn't close the case. It wouldn't say whether Nolan was conscious when he went into the water or unconscious, whether he went in on his own or was forced. Those, he said, are exactly the questions the rest of this investigation is now built to answer. Complicating things further, parts of Nolan's throat were missing by the time his body reached the independent examiner, still in the possession of the state's own medical examiner's office. The team says they're now coordinating directly with that office, hoping to finally examine the one piece of tissue everyone agrees should have traveled with the rest of the body in the first place. None of this is unfolding quietly, or in one direction only. Attorneys working alongside Crump have filed new subpoenas demanding records from Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, Meta, and the location tracking app Life360, an attempt to build, digitally, the same minute-by-minute timeline the CETO call and the tide models are being asked to build physically. Digital forensic specialists note that platforms like these often retain data on their own servers long after a message disappears from someone's screen, which means deleted may not be the dead end it looks like. And according to co-counsel Eric Hertz, Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath's office has signaled a willingness to actually weigh what this independent investigation turns up, rather than dismiss it outright. Which raises the real stakes of everything unfolding here. If the audio, the tides, and the digital timeline all end up confirming what investigators have believed from the start, this case moves toward a quiet, if painful, resolution. But if even one of them doesn't line up, if the water didn't move the way it should have, or the recording holds something nobody's caught yet, a case already headed for a grand jury could look very different by the time it gets there. For now, every one of those threads is still open, and the people with the power to finally close them are only just getting started.